How we doing today, guys? Sam back with this week's fishing report for you guys. As it gets really hot out there, there's a lot of stuff that starts to happen in the bay. So let's start off with the rockfish. So rock fishing is becoming a little bit tougher as it gets a little bit hotter. People are still catching them on a lot of live bait fishing, either live spot or using cut up pieces of soft crab. It's always a good bet. When you're doing that kind of fishing, it's best to be around some relatively shallow water structure, the bridge pilings, lighthouses, stuff like that is going to be really productive. If you get north of the bridge, even better. It seems like that's where the biggest concentrations of rockfish have been. One thing you do want to keep in mind is with these hot 90+ degree days, it's important to make sure that we safely handle these fish. We're going to have a lot of fish going back over with the slot size, so it's important to keep those fish in the water if you don't think they're slot size, or take a quick picture and get them back in as quick as you can. This is really a vulnerable time for those fish, so it's important to take care of them. As far as white perch goes, it's the full swing of the summer. White perch is really fantastic, whether you want to cast some small spinners in the shallows in the rivers like the Magothy, the Severn, Whitehall Bay. You can certainly get a good mess of them doing that. Or if you want to go out and fish a little bit deeper water structure, maybe look for some bigger ones, jig some sting silvers, Chesapeake sabikis, things like that on some hard bottom out in the bay or the rivers. You can certainly do that as well and pile them up. You know, some folks have been catching some real big ones off the hackets. So that's a good bet for you if you're really looking for some of those bigger white perch. Another thing is always the bridge pilings. When I'm looking for the bigger perch, I tend to use small jigs on the bottom, whether it be something with a really short shank hook and a jig head I can put a plastic on, or most of the time you're going to need a little bit like a stink silver or some sort of heavy metal jig that has a small hook on it. Those can be fantastic. We have the GI jig rain minnow, which is a good option, stink silvers. We have a nice little jig from Tsunami that does great for that. So if you're looking for the bigger perch, don't be afraid to fish a little bit bigger baits and find that deeper water. As far as moving down towards the bay, the further south you get, we've seen some really good cobia fishing, especially down towards the tunnel, but you don't have to go all the way down. They're not quite up to the Maryland line yet. Maybe we'll see that sooner rather than later. But cobia fishing is great. It can be a little bit tough whether you want to chum for these fish, set up and chum with LY, or you want to sight fish, you know, with a tower, get up on a ladder or something that you can get to get a little bit better visibility. Finding those fish has been a little bit tough, but when you do, it's great fishing. And it's a great way to stay off the stripers here in that heart of the season. So that's a good bet for you. The redfish have been in the same areas. They're a little bit further north, almost up to the Maryland line. I mean, there have been some folks that have caught some in Maryland, but really the bigger concentrations haven't moved all the way up yet. We'll probably start to see that here towards the end of the month and then next month. Same sort of thing for those with the redfish. Using a lot of side scan on the boat, moving around a lot, getting on those channel edges and kind of looking for those things. Another good option is if you're down south, you might run into some schools of some bluefish. And right underneath of those schools of bluefish, a lot of times this red drum will sit underneath of them. You could throw some bigger jigs, usually in the 7 to 10 inch range for the drum and cobia. So good options there. And if you want to push out off of the coast, they've been doing some terrific flounder fishing out off of the inshore reefs, catching some really big flounder as well as some sea bass. You can either go out on a head boat. I know Monty Hawkins on the Morning Star, they've been having some great trips for the sea bass and flounder. As far as the back bays behind Ocean City goes, Assawoman Bay, areas like that, they've been catching some too. A little bit tougher, you get a lot of boat traffic this time of the year, but if you can get out there in the mornings or evenings, do some drifting, jigging some gulp or fishing some minnows on a drift, you can have some really good summertime flounder fishing, which is always fun. So I guess the last thing we'll talk about is crabbing. So crabbing has kind of been a little up and down to the start of the year. We usually have a good run early June, and then it starts to slow down as a lot of the crabs will molt. It's a little bit harder to catch a crab when he's in a soft crab or peeler form. So we're kind of in that phase right now. We've been catching a lot of big heavy crabs. They're starting to molt. Once they finish their molt, the crabbing's going to pick back up here. So Severn River, Magothy, running trot lines, stuff like that. Can be a good bet for you. If you're going out this week, you might have a little hard time getting numbers, but you should get some big, heavy, full crabs. In a week or so, we'll start to get some of those crabs that have shed and back on the trot lines and traps. So really good options for you guys there. And thanks for stopping by and have a great weekend.